Hi everyone, and welcome back to Thriving in the City, a channel where we are sharing our learnings as early career professionals navigating working in the city, wherever that may be for you. My name is Joyce, and I spent the last 6 years working in investment banking in London. And in today's episode, I wanted us to talk about acing finance interviews, so doing well in your finance interviews. Over the years, I've done a lot of interviews for my summer internships, for my internships overall, for my full-time job, and I've also been on the other side interviewing people for finance roles in many capacities. And so for today, I'm going to divide this into two parts. So how you should prepare for your finance interview, and then the second part is what are interviewers actually looking out for when you do those interviews. So let's start with the first part, how to prepare for your finance interview. The first tip that I give, which is like a tip I give every time, is to make sure that you speak to people who've done the process before. Again, it doesn't matter when they did it could have been years ago. It doesn't even matter that they're going to give you the exact questions that have been asked. No, that's not the point of it. The point of it is for them to be able to tell you what the experience feels like, how you should prepare, like what's generally the field. Is it technical? Is it behavioral? Like what are the type of things that, how does it go? What's the experience like? What should I make sure that I'm doing ahead of this interview? So definitely, as much as you can, don't go into an interview having not spoken to someone that's done that interview before. Obviously, not always possible, but where that is possible, make sure that you speak to people. Don't treat the world like you're the only one that's going through what you're going through. Where you obviously, like, I get it. Sometimes you reach out to people on LinkedIn, nobody responds to you. That's different. At least you tried. So speaking to someone who's been through that process before, even if it's even searching for YouTube videos really on maybe that particular company's process, for example, but I think it's so helpful to have done research from people that have actually been in that position before. The second tip, particularly for finance interviews, probably applies for other jobs, but would be to know your technical concepts properly. Know them properly, as in if you had to teach it to someone else, you could explain it. And the reason I say this one is important is because I've also been guilty. Like I said, I've been on the other side. I've also been guilty where I know the answer to a question on surface level, but then if they ask me a few follow-up questions, it's like, oh, my whole knowledge has scattered. That's up to where I know. So as much as you can, understand the technicals in such a way that you can it. And I think this is how you practice. For example, once you're speaking to your friends and you're like, okay, this is how you calculate WACC, and then you do this, and then you do this, and why do we do this for the cost of debt? Why do you do this for the cost of everything? That's a simple example, but just making sure that you really understand the technicals so that when you're grilled, again, a lot of times when you're applying for entry level roles, it's not like you need to know everything, but because of how competitive the processes get, one sure way to stand out is if you seem to have a good, clear grasp of technical concepts. So understand your technical concepts and know them properly, be able to explain them. I always say that when I finally got my job, I don't know if I said this in my internship story video, if I posted that one, was that I remember that I wrote down all the questions, all the potential questions that they would ask me in my interview, and I was reading through them. I would try to explain them to myself, explain them to other people. Just making sure that you understand the technical concepts properly is the second tip that I would give. The third tip is to also make sure you practice answering questions out loud. I do this thing. I don't know if everyone does them too. I even just said how I wrote down in a book. Nowadays, I've evolved. If I'm preparing for an interview or preparing for something where I have to answer questions, I write them down. I type them all in my Words app, in my Microsoft Word. I've written them down in Microsoft Word, maybe in my notes app, what my answers are going to be, and I read them and over again in my mind. But I think the next step to making sure that you sound comfortable and not rehearsed, quite confident, is practicing them out loud. And I would say that practicing them out loud helps you from the perspective of, okay, when you're down to it, like when you're in the interview, it's not like you can actually check your notes. But if you practice them out loud, then you have the muscle memory of, okay, I say this and then I say this. You've heard yourself say it before, and then you get a lot more confident. And someone might be watching this video thinking, oh, why is she emphasizing on soft skills? It's not about technicals. I hear you, but again, there's all these small things that make the difference between who is a good candidate or who comes across as a good candidate. Because it's one thing to have the knowledge and another thing entirely to be able to communicate it properly. So that's my third tip. Make sure that you practice out loud. My fourth tip would be to make sure that you're aware of what's happening in the market. I'm smiling because I've also been guilty of this one before. Whatever finance interview it is, make sure that there's stuff you can speak about that relates to the market, like some market awareness and the impact on maybe the division that you're applying to or the type of business you're applying to. Take, for example, if you're going into a VC interview and you don't know latest developments in the VC industry, or just something that you can speak to. For example, again, another example, investment banking. You have to, a lot of times, you have to talk about deals that you've heard about. So there needs to be, you need to make sure that you're commercially aware. And again, it's not that, oh, you like in the job every day, you know what's happening in the market. It's just that to present a high level of interest to get the job you're trying to get, you actually do need to be commercially aware. So ensuring that you can speak to some things that have happened in the market or something that has happened in the market, what do you think the financial implications are, and what you think, like, or how it potentially affects the division you're applying to is very important. And then the fifth tip that I would have is to making sure that you prepare to ask questions. Oh, this one is so important. It's really important that you prepare to ask questions because then that's you giving a chance to show how keen or like how keen you are on the job, like how you're thinking. Again, as they always say, it's not the questions that you could Google that you should ask, but then just, oh, how does it, anything about the division or the job or something that you genuinely are curious about. And one question that always annoys me that I don't think people should ask, or feel free to leave in the comments where your thoughts are, but personally, I think a lot of people that have interviewed people before don't like, is asking, how do you think I did during this interview? Oh God, that's not the question. When they ask you any questions for us, like I don't think it is. I mean, someone that's in HR can comment, but like saying, oh, how do you think I did it during this interview? Or would you hire me? Or do you have any feedback for me on this interview? Is so annoying because I don't think that you're giving people enough. First of all, I think you're putting the interviewer in an awkward position. That's one. Two, they've not gotten a chance to debrief in terms of how does this candidate compare with the other candidates, or how, like, where am I going to actually pass this person to the next round given the things they've said. Meantime, they're just taking notes, noticing everything you've said. I mean, obviously they're forming a view, but I don't, my hot take is that people shouldn't be asking, oh, how did I do? Like, how do you think my interview has gone? When at the end, when they ask you for any questions, because that's not even what's being assessed. What's being assessed is how interested is she or he in this division, how interested is she or he in this market, how are they thinking about the market. I would say those are type of questions that you should be asking to reveal your knowledge and your curiosity on the space. Now, on to what I believe that interviewers look out for, or what interviewers are looking out for when they interview candidates. I would say, I mean, aside from all the technical knowledge and being able to answer questions properly, another one would be definitely coming across as confident and enthusiastic. I do sometimes find that, like, obviously, like, again, it's okay if you're a chill person, you're very chill, you're just very calm normally, but I would say that when you're doing the interviews, as much as you can, coming off as confident and enthusiastic. And this one only comes from practice. Like practice, as I said, practicing your questions out loud, practicing with a friend, that whole sparring, maybe talking in the mirror, whatever. Definitely confidence and seeming enthusiastic. Not perfect, because you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to sound overly polished, but definitely like coming off as confident and enthusiastic as much as you can is something that I think definitely differentiates a candidate from the other ones. Because there's always communication. I think in almost every interview there's always like like how do they rank on communication. The second point one I would say is also being quite structured in your answers, structured in the way that you answer questions. Again, maybe it depends on consulting people versus non-consulting type people, but the way that I would think is always like being quite clear in your head of, oh, what's the question asked? Am I answering the question? Not like going around in circles. Like even if sometimes we miss, yeah, like you say too much. Sorry for saying miss, yeah. Like you talk, you just like say lots of things and go around the bush, but not actually hit the nail on the head of what the question's being answered. Just be reminding yourself in your head that, oh, what are my three things? Oh, I said number one, this, number two. So whenever you're done, if you can come back and say, just to circle back, my 3 points were A, communicate well, B, be quite structured, if that makes sense. So as much as you can, be structured in your answers. And I know there's times when you don't actually know what your 3 points are. Like if they say, for example, what are your strengths, and you're still thinking to, maybe start with, one of my strengths is that I am da 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 da, and you're thinking in your head, and you're like, another strength that I usually have is da 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 da, and then another strength that I have, and then you can come back and then say, I would say, in summary, I would say that my three strengths are da, 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 like this, and this, as I just said. So being quite structured is a really helpful way to interview well. It's something that I think differentiates the good candidates. A third tip that I would say like candidates look out for, or quality that they look out for is making sure that as much as you can, whenever you have those situational questions. So when I say situational questions, I mean those questions like tell me about a time when you worked in a team, or tell me about a time when you solved a conflict, or tell me about a time when you dealt with a difficult team member, those type of things. As much as you can, where you can, obviously this is not possible for everybody, but where you can, use real work examples. Like don't use hypothetical examples. That's even one. But then second one is if you can, don't like just don't use your school examples. Actually use real world when you worked in an internship, for example. Like if you have internships on your CV, definitely use those to talk about your situation. Now, you know when they say answer with the star method, I think situation, task, action, result. Let that example be a real life example. I think it just helps because it helps people to put you in the work context and think about how you deal with this scenario. You know what I mean? And then it also kind of just emphasizes the richness of the experience that you have as a person. And then the next point that I have is something that I'm not doing properly, but this was also feedback that I've gotten in an interview. Actually, my current job, when I got it during my for my internship, this was feedback that I got, is to make sure that as much as you can, speak slowly. Especially like when you're applying for international roles, the person that's interviewing you is probably like from a completely different place than you are. And if you're listening to this video now, you're already even thinking, you're right, I actually can't hear you. Just like these are the issues. Like making sure that when you do interviews, you speak quite slowly. They usually say think about like when you feel like you're speaking slow, I promise you're not speaking slow. So where you can, make sure that you speak clearly and slowly. I used to have a mentor that would say enunciate your words, so like pronounce them quite clearly during your process, so that you don't lose out, right? So that you don't say really smart stuff but no one heard it. Finally, in terms of just like, I know people always say send an email after to say thank you. Could be a nice touch. Could be a nice touch. I'm not too bullish on it. Send an email. Don't send an email. I do agree that maybe there's times that people have perhaps sent me an email and I was like, oh yeah, like this is quite nice. I remember the person much more because of that. But I wouldn't say like it hurts or helps as much. Again, someone that's in HR or someone that has a hot take can leave a comment below regarding this. In summary, I really hope that this was helpful to somebody. In summary, I trust that this was useful to somebody somewhere. As long as you're practicing, you can talk through the technicals, you come off as you can confidently, you communicate to the best of your ability, speaking slowly, enunciating your words. I trust you'll do well in your processes. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.